Got it.
This meeting is being recorded.
There we go. Leave it to the guy that has the least amount of technical experience. Well, welcome again, everybody, to Commercial Insurance in a Nutshell. We're happy to present this to you. We're the Shasta Cascade Small Business Development Center. We are in Trinity and Shasta County. We cover those two counties up here in the North State. There are SBDC offices throughout the United States and throughout California, depending on your geographic area. We're a nonprofit organization and provide confidential, no-cost advisory training and, of course, one-on-one, which is very good. We are all paying for this already through our tax dollars. SBA and the state of California, through our tax dollar present information, helps pay for our services. That way we can offer it to you at no cost. You can see we got a lot of people. I'm on there. Our other consultants locally are on this particular slide. And we have another 40 or so consultants that are in specific areas that are available to you through our Sacramento and San Francisco offices. HR, food service, restaurant, food truck, you name it. We've got various people that are specialists in that area. So it really is good to take advantage of this thing, and we can assist in many, many areas. I'm the money guy locally up here, Shasta, Trinity County. This is our bragging slide, we call it. Obviously, we cover these two counties, and these are some of the numbers we've done in the last several years. Since 2017. We were able to assist in getting 19 million in loans to people, sales increases, advising hours, new businesses started by people that came in to chat with us ahead of time. This is our lawyer slide, I call it, right? Information provided in the webinar is supplementary material provided to registrants are intended for the educational, informational purpose only, does not constitute professional, financial, and legal advice. Technically, we do not have attorneys and we do not have CPAs on our consulting group, okay? We hope that you as business owners have made some kind of inroads for those two specific needs already or yourself, okay? So no registrant should act or fail to act on the basis of material contained in the webinar. Northern California Development, its host, Cal Poly Humboldt Sponsored Programs Foundation, disclaims any liability, loss, risk. Again, the lawyers made us do this. I'd like to welcome now Harrison Payne, who is our insurance specialist, to talk about small business insurance. Take it away, Harrison.
Awesome. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us and taking time out of your schedules today. I know it's not really a fun conversation to have, but a necessary one, especially if you guys are business owners, whether you have employees or not, or you're just a freelance entrepreneur, or maybe you're just a contractor that takes on work. Whatever the case is, you need to have the proper coverage in place to make sure that you are not susceptible to lawsuits. Even if you have an LLC, you know, a lot of business owners tend to have LLCs thinking it kind of exempts them or protects them from getting into any debt, but you still want to protect the actual LLC itself. So all these policies go into making sure that your business can keep financially stable. So just an agenda today, we're going to go over just commercial general liability. That's just going to cover the liability exposure of your business activities, commercial property insurance, commercial auto, workers' compensation, disability, and then professional liability. So the first thing we're going to cover today is general liability coverage. So this is pretty simple. Say you have a storefront and people are walking in and out. You get the kind of old classic case of you mopped your floor, somebody slips and falls in your store. You're liable for it. People can get attorneys and they can sue you for bodily injury. So commercial general liability is kind of meant to protect against things like that. It covers costs incurred if you're sued and found liable. The policy will pay out up to the policy limits. Usually a good starter limit is just $1 million policy. They're generally very cheap depending on the industry you're in. The insurance company will even hire lawyers to defend you, even if it's a frivolous claim that you will clearly win against in court. Somebody just might have found an attorney that's confident enough to take their case, or maybe they're willing to just pay the attorney and get a case started against you. No matter what kind of grounds they have to stand on, if it seems like you're winning or not, we'll hire attorneys and you'll get that liability. You'll get your court expenses paid for. And we'll go to the next slide here. Property coverage. This is a little bit more broad. So property coverage protects the property you've chosen to cover. The most common types of property coverage are commercial buildings and the business personal property. So this could be, say you're a contractor, this could be your tools, this could be the actual building structure itself if you own the building. And if you do not own the building, you will just need to cover your business personal property and worry about commercial general liability. So the building owner isn't really liable usually in a commercial lease contract. It works it works very different than an actual just, if you're renting a house, for example, personal use, they're exempt from most of the liability occurrence from that. So everything, people walking in and out, any liability exposure you get, that's on you to pay for. So property coverage will cover the building if you own it. If not, you're just going to kind of need that general liability coverage, and then some coverage for your business personal property. Commercial auto. This is also really important. A lot of people, when they start a business, even if you're a realtor, they don't realize when you're going around, regardless of if it's like real brick and mortar business, again, where you're going to use realtor as an example, you're kind of self-employed. You might be still working under somebody else's business, but say you put car magnets on your vehicle and you're driving around town, you're trying to advertise yourself a little bit, and you're using that vehicle for company use. The majority of the time, if you get found at fault in an accident and the other person is obviously expecting you to pay out, your personal auto insurance can actually end up denying that claim because of the magnet on your car, they're being advertising on there, or if they just find out that you're using this for business use because you have a commercial or you have a personal auto policy. So it doesn't cover commercial activities. Sometimes your auto insurance, your personal auto policy will have a endorsement that you can put on there, and that'll allow for certain commercial activities. Same thing. Some people, do Uber, Lyft, DoorDash. So a lot of insurance companies will have a endorsement that you can add for rideshare coverage, things like that. But the idea is it's going to protect against losses caused by vehicles owned by the business or, vehicles that you use for business purposes, and vehicles owned by employees used on company time. So that's another really good thing that you don't usually think about is when you're sending somebody off. Say you run an office, say you have a receptionist that's slow, you want to do a nice thing and buy the office some coffee, so you send the receptionist out to go to Starbucks or Dutch Bros. If she goes out on company time and you're the one who sent her out there to get some coffee, and she gets into an accident and she's found at fault, again, she's using her car for business use on your company time. So her auto insurance actually isn't going to be the one, her personal auto policy, that's going to pay out. It's supposed to be your insurance. So make sure that you're being careful when you're sending people out. You actually have the proper coverage for that. Another one is hired and non-owned auto coverage. That's extremely important to select. So if you're renting vehicles, or you use people that you're hiring to do work for you, that coverage on the policy will kind of protect with that too. There's a few main coverages on here. The first is on a commercial auto policy. The first is going to be just liability coverage. Again, that's just going to cover for your bodily injury. It's going to cover for property damage, similar to regular personal auto insurance. You know, you have bodily injury coverage. If you're found at fault, you injure somebody in the auto accident, your bodily injury coverage will pay out. Then you have the property damage coverage, covers the damage to their vehicle or their property. So we'll go to the next slide here. And then you have your comprehensive and collision coverage. Comprehensive coverage is going to cover for things that are not really your fault, such as damage from natural disasters, glass damage, theft, etc. I don't know how many of you are local to the Reading area, but I think it was around 2019, we had this giant hailstorm where all of a sudden in Reading, California, where it gets 114 degrees in the summer, we started raining golf ball size hail, literally. And all these people had dents all over their car, looked like they drove straight through a golf course or something, and they had glass damage and all these things. Now the people that had comprehensive coverage, they got paid out, and it's not usually claims that go against you are going to go against your driving record, and most companies won't increase your rates due to those claims. So comprehensive coverage is very important to also have on your commercial auto insurance, you know, protecting that vehicle against theft or natural disasters, glass damage, things like that. Collision coverage is going to cover for things that are your fault. You know, again, we talked about if you're found at fault, the bodily injury coverage is going to pay out. You know, the liability coverage is going to pay out. It doesn't always have to be that you hit a car. Say you backed into a fire hydrant, or you know, you accidentally hit somebody's property or mailbox. All those things are things that are going to be covered under your actual liability coverage, covering damage to other people's property. So collision coverage is going to cover for things that you're found at fault in those accidents, but you want your property fixed. You want your car fixed. So you're going to be subject to a deductible first. You know, I recommend with deductibles, you choose a deductible that works well financially for you. There's no one size fits all approach. If you're somebody that likes a low deductible, that's awesome. You know, just keep in mind, sometimes when you look at rate increases and things like that, it's not always worth it to make a claim. You know, usually around $1,000 is kind of like the magic number. Like anything over 1,000, you know, go ahead and make the claim on. But it's important to also check driving records, because insurance companies will check records most of the time. You know, anyone driving the vehicle regularly will need to also be listed. And that's another thing. If they find out that you're having, say you have a company vehicle, you know, I used to work in auto body, and they'd send guys out all the time in a company vehicle to pick up customers, and we had a shuttle service and all that. Now looking back as an insurance agent, it kind of scares me, because none of those people were really ever listed specifically on their insurance. So those people get into an accident, they're found at fault, there's a big chance that the company could deny the claim. Most, you know, some companies are really good about it. They don't deny the claim, but they do have the right to if you don't list them on a policy. So that's where you need to check with the carrier, ask good questions, and make sure that you know, you understand the rules with that. So every company is a little bit different. Just ask them, hey, what are the rules with adding drivers? You know, if I add this driver, they're going to be driving regularly. You know, does it make sense to do that? They'll probably tell you yes. You know, or do you have to ask them too? You know, if there's just somebody that is going to be driving the vehicle once a month, you just run them out on an errand. You know, ask the insurance company, would that be covered if they get found at fault in an accident? Do I need to add them to the policy? You know, make sure you're asking the questions. You're not just letting the agent take you through a process and write you a policy. You need to do something that makes sense for you and it makes sense for your situation. Workers' compensation. This one is definitely important. It's going to cover healthcare and pays a portion of lost wages for an employee hurt at work. In California, you legally have to have this coverage. If you have employees, you are not required to have it for independent contractors, but a lot of people misuse, I guess, independent contracting. There's specific laws and rules with what you can do or what you can tell an independent contractor to do. And, you know, especially if they work pretty much exclusively for your company. So I would really check into that, make sure that you know, if you have independent contractors that work for you, that they shouldn't be more listed as an employee and have workers' compensation coverage, because that can get very, very sticky. You know, if somebody works for you and they should have been listed, they should have been an employee, you should have been paying payroll taxes and things like that. And then they get hurt and you go through this process. And on top of that, you don't have workers' comp coverage or anything like that. So now not only are you going to get slammed with, you know, probably penalties and fines and things like that, but you're also going to be probably in a pretty sticky lawsuit. You're paying out for their injuries as well. It's not required for you as the business owner in most cases. You know, you don't have to have workers' compensation coverage for yourself, you know, for if you get injured on the job. But, you know, keep in mind, not having workers' compensation for employees can result in massive fines. Rates are based on the rate per 100 and how many employees are covered and how many hours each employee works. I want to add to that too. It's also based on your occupation. Roofing company with guys that are up on roofs all the time, you know, swinging hammers and that probably get hurt or cut or bruised on the job on a pretty regular basis is going to have a much higher rate for workers' compensation than if you're a business owner and you have a couple employees sitting at a desk. You know, what are the odds that employees sitting at a desk all the time is going to get hurt? Probably pretty low. So it's also going to be based on how well you manage the risk at your business, as far as making sure that your work environment is safe. If you have safety protocols set up, if you've been in the industry a long time, and you have management experience. If you have prior management experience, even if you're a new business owner, they take those things into consideration for workers' compensation. They know you have expertise. They know you know a little bit more what you're doing. And then same thing, if you have safety protocols and trainings in place, those all actually help your rates in a very massive way. And they're very, very cheap to implement at your business. So make sure that you have safety protocols that'll really help rates, because workers' compensation coverage is a pretty good, you know, size or portion of your payroll expense. And let's see here, we'll go to the next slide. There also will be audits to know what to charge based on your payroll. So a lot of people, when they get workers' compensation insurance, they go into it with the knowledge that it is based on how much the employee works through the year. It is based on their wages and how much they pay those employees annually, because that's ultimately what you're trying to protect. You're trying to pay for their medical expenses, and you're also trying to make sure that they're going to have enough money to keep them afloat, right? If something were to happen. So there's going to be an audit so that the company knows that what they're charging is actually sufficient with what your payroll is. So just be honest with insurance companies, because they're going to find out anyways. Don't lie to them and try to undercut how many hours your employees work, or how many employees you have. You know, a lot of the times they'll allow you to pay monthly based on the amount of hours those employees work per month. So again, perfect example, a roofing company. When it's super sunny outside, that roofer is going to be able to do their job. So they're going to have employees maybe working 50 to 60 hours a week. So they might be more comfortable paying more money for that during that time, when all of a sudden they have this business coming in, their revenue's higher. They might not want to pay for you know, an amount of hours that they aren't working in the winter season where it's slower, right? So maybe they work an average of 40 hours a week, but in the summer months they work 50, and in the winter months they might work 30. If it makes more sense, a lot of companies will allow you to just pay monthly. You'll have to report that every month. So you have to work with your payroll person and make sure that they're reporting that to the insurance companies, and then they'll you know, deduct the appropriate amount. If they do their audit at the end of the year and they have found you underreported hours, they'll charge the difference in what you have paid if you properly reported wages and hours. So again, if you basically, the concept is you reported that they work 30 hours a week, and at the end of the year they're doing their audit and they work 50 hours a week. All of a sudden they're going to do a pretty substantial upcharge, and they're going to take more money, because all this time, you know, when you get into it, when you get into a claim, they're going to look at, well, how much is that employee making a month? So if you've underreported it, you've also been underpaying. So they'll make sure that they're getting their money. They'll make sure that they're getting their fair share. So it's very important to make sure that you report the wages and hours worked correctly. If you over-report, you'll receive a refund. So I think, you know, if you can stomach it and you can pay for it, it's a little bit better to overshoot than to undershoot, because you'll just receive a refund for anything you've overpaid, which is kind of nice. So yeah, again, just be honest when it comes to reporting. Have a good payroll person, and make sure you keep in touch with who does your workers' compensation. Have an open line of communication with them, and make sure that you are reporting your hours correctly, reporting the employees' hours correctly. Sometimes it really helps to have a staffing company that handles all these things for you. So just make sure you understand what you're doing. Make sure you have somebody that's really knowledgeable to help you, and that you're reporting the wages and hours correctly. So disability insurance. This is paid into generally in California with payroll taxes. The state has their own disability insurance plan, but it only pays for about 60% of lost wages. So you can also have supplemental disability insurance for your employees. Those kind of count as an employee benefit. If you do buy those plans, say you buy like an AFLAC plan, for example, to help supplement and make sure that that employee is not just going to be left with 60%, but, you know, maybe 90 or 100% of their wages if they get injured. If you pay for that AFLAC plan, those things can also be used as write-offs. So you'll pay a little bit less on your taxes. That's definitely a huge benefit. Again, this is pretty straightforward. You know, if somebody gets injured and they cannot work, then you're going to want disability coverage to make sure that you're paying for their lost wages. Professional liability. So this can also be referred to as errors and omissions. Think an architect that draws up plans, and then the builder goes in and builds the building based off of those plans, but they got a few calculations wrong. And all of a sudden, 2-3 years later, the whole building collapses. Well, that's a professional error, and there's coverage for that through professional liability. It's going to provide coverage essentially for businesses to protect against claims of negligence, and it's just essentially made to cover your mistakes. And same thing, like if you're a contractor too, or maybe you're, again, a realtor, there's also different types of plans. You know, if you're a realtor and you miss the document, or you should have turned something in and you didn't, then there's coverage for that. If you're a contractor and you messed up a project, did something wrong, the professional liability is going to cover for that as well. Any questions about any of this? I know I went through a lot of that very, very quickly, but do you have any questions on any of it? Would you like me to expand on anything?
I'm not seeing anything in the chat. If you are interested in adding a question as we move forward, please go in the chat section, and I'll have Harrison try to answer it as we go along, okay? There now, Harrison.
All right, it's kind of a wrap up and making sure that you guys understand. So I guess to summarize, do your due diligence, ask questions to your company. Whoever you're getting your insurance through, make sure you understand your coverage. If there's anything you're curious about, if you have any sort of liability exposure that seems, or any activities that seem a little, irregular based off of industry standards, bring it up to your insurance company and make sure that you don't need some sort of separate policy for that or extra coverage. So keeping lines of open communication with your agent is really important. I work for a farmer's agency, and we have the best clients we have are the clients that regularly call in. They're going to report changes that are happening in the business. They're going to ask questions and make sure that they understand their policy well. Everybody's a little different. Even if you're in the same industry as somebody else, you're going to operate your business a little bit differently. So make sure you voice those things to the agent, and that he or she has things properly structured for you. Let's see. What are the mandatory insurance needed and what are optional for consideration? Really good question. General liability coverage for most business owners is going to be mandatory. For contractors, it's a legality that you have to have liability coverage. I would say it's not mandatory for most, but errors and omissions coverage, that differs from general liability. General liability is kind of like, you have normal business operations going. Again, you're a restaurant owner, you're mopping the floor, somebody slips and falls. That's a very different liability exposure than if you completely prepared food incorrectly and you used ingredients that were moldy, you put it in, and then somebody got really bad food poisoning and had to be sent to the hospital. So there's a difference in how those two things are going to be handled as far as claims. So I would say it's not a legality, but I would say from an agent perspective, I think it should be mandatory to also have errors and omissions insurance, and then workers' compensation. That is also completely mandatory. The state's going to monitor that. They're going to get after you if you don't have the workers' compensation coverage. The state's going to fine you. And then on top of that, if you have lapses in workers' compensation coverage, it's going to be a heck of a lot more difficult to find a company that's going to give you a good rate on workers' compensation insurance. Same thing, commercial auto, just like when it comes to your personal auto insurance, DMV is going to get after you if you don't have auto insurance coverage. So if you have a business vehicle, auto insurance, commercial auto insurance, completely mandatory. So I would focus mainly on those four things. Again, like disability insurance, you pay into through your, payroll taxes and things like that. So those aren't necessarily things you have to go out and get another policy for. It's a nice thing to do as a business owner, if you can stomach it from the payroll. That's not really, a necessity. It's not mandatory to do. So those four coverages you should absolutely have.
We also had a question from one of our people online that said that a sole owner, sole proprietor, it sounds like, for a senior living placement a kind of business. What kind of insurance do I need? I'll go ahead and have you follow up with after me, Harrison, because I ended up having to do this myself. I'll give you an example. I have Joe Rodola's Debt Consulting, a little nonprofit, not a nonprofit, for-profit I run out of my house, right? And I help people with their credit, try to figure out ways to fix it, get things corrected. Hopefully their score goes up. Okay, pretty simple. I worked for a company for 14 years doing it for a nonprofit organization. So I have a lot of history and I've been in credit for 50 years, okay? I'm also teaching a class, how to buy a first house, right? It's called a home buyer class. Been teaching that for 15 years. When I went out on my own, so paid by the city and the county, they said, Joe, you gotta have $1 million liability policy, we can't pay you. And I said, really? So I went out to my insurance agent and said, hey, I need $1 million business liability policy so I can get paid by these entities that required it. So went in, added questions, answered questions, and so I got $1 million liability for the business. I teach at other people's sites. I teach at the library. I teach at the Economic Development Center. I don't teach at anybody at the house. I have no one in my home. That helps. But $1 million liability, $1 million personal umbrella, raise my liability on the personal side to $1 million as well. Good agent, cross sale, right? But it's not bad. As a consultant out of the house with limited liability, because I have disclaimers whenever I teach classes, it costs me $65 a month for the million. But it makes me sleep at night better. No, somebody has an issue, and I've been now in business for it's my 11th year. No problems, but it makes me sleep better at night for sure. If nothing else, right, Harrison?
Oh yeah, for sure. And that's a great point that you made, Joe. So like kind of picked out of there. Every company's different on what's mandatory for them. The only things that I know of that are usually 100%, like doesn't really matter your industry, workers' compensation, and then the state disability insurance, right? Now there are some businesses you don't require general liability, but do you really want that exposure, especially in California? Times are tough right now. As an agent, when recessions happen, or when wars are happening, or we're in just tough economic times in general, we see liability claims go like this. Like it just takes off, not just in the frequency of the claims, but also in the amount of claims paid. There's entire attorneys out there that their whole sole focus is trying to find loopholes to be able to get after business owners in cases of injury or accident. There's times where things aren't required, but you should definitely have them, if nothing else, for your peace of mind and to make sure your family's protected. Even if you have an LLC, do you want to keep that LLC running? You're going to need to protect the LLC. And then in extreme cases, they can also get the LLC thrown out in court, so they can still come out after your personal assets in certain cases. Again, talk to a business attorney about these things, and somebody that is really an industry expert on what is required, but have them educate you again on what other kinds of liability exposures you can face. So that way you can tell the agent, and we'll kind of look at, do a risk assessment and see what we can do to protect you against those things.
And another question came in about, from one of the clients said they came in a little bit late. I work for myself as a newborn care specialist. I go into homes and help families with their newborns, training and teaching parents and babies. I do not have employees. My question is, do I need insurance for myself?
Again, I would talk to somebody who's an industry expert. I would say bare minimum, this errors and omissions, right? Because if you tell somebody to do it in something incorrectly, or maybe they misinterpret what you say and they want to come after you for that, it doesn't matter if they don't have a leg to stand on in court, all of a sudden you're going to have to be faced with defending yourself, and it's going to cost money. And especially in that kind of industry, I mean, parents take their kids very seriously. Obviously, it's usually the most important thing to you. And parents can also get defensive. You know, they might not also want to listen to you about certain things based on the customs of their family. And, you know, sometimes people get sue happy for that. So I would definitely talk with somebody, a business attorney, or I don't know if we have anybody, Joe, at SBDC that would be able to help her with that. But for sure, talk with an industry expert on that, and then see what the requirements are. And then that's when you would want to communicate that to your agent so they can find an appropriate policy for you, and maybe talk about what's going to be worth it to you or what's not. So.
Very good ideas. Any other questions come up here? We've got a little more time on our 1 hour Zoom that we get to have time for. I think Harrison kind of hit the nail on the head. You know, if and even in my consulting at SBDC, when somebody comes in to open a new business, I tell them, okay, do you want an LLC or a sole proprietorship, right? How much liability do you want? Right? How much personal liability do you want? That's the first question. Ask is, what do you own? Do you have rentals, an RV, a boat, a place in the Bahamas, rental properties? Boy, you really want to get some personal protection more, I guess, than the guy that's just renting and he's got an old jalopy. You know what I mean? Asset-based questions are a lot to ask for. See, you need that answered. If somebody sued you and wanted to go after you personally, what are you going to lose? What are your possibilities of losing? And what? That really drives the question, right? In my case, in my business, I was required to get it because they wouldn't hire me to teach the class without it. Put it away because I learned through having to do something, right? You guys are learning without having to do it. Yeah. So if you have liability, you're a lawn mow person, you're cutting trees, you're trimming branches off stuff, you're cleaning gutters, you're climbing ladders, all those are high risk. So you gotta have it in those cases. In my opinion, you gotta have it. Doesn't matter if you have an LLC or not. Right? What if your lawnmower shoots a rock and kills the owner's dog? What? You're gonna do it. It's gonna happen. So all these things really are kind of like, what if something happens? What are you potentially going to have a chance of losing? That's
of course.
Well,
yeah. And a good rule of thumb with that is take a look at your net worth. Figure out how much your assets are. It's the same thing with your home. You got a mortgage, that's totally fine. But I'd bet if you bought your home anything over 2 years ago or even a year ago, you probably have some equity in it. You know, home prices have gone up. So people can come after the equity in your house. They can come after your retirement accounts. You know, wage garnishments can happen up to 25% in California. So figure out what your personal assets and your net worth are and have liability coverage for at least that. You can always get sued over that, right? But I would have coverage for at least that. That way, because in court cases, a lot of the times what ends up happening is they don't really look at the total damages. The attorneys get really ballsy and they dig into your financial situation. They kind of look at your assets and they add it all together and they just try to sue you for that. Most of the time they might not get it, right? You know, they probably will settle for less. It's kind of a bit of a Hail Mary, but they're going to put the hook out there at least a lot of the times and see how much they can get, you know. So they're not always worried about what's fair compensation or what the actual damages incurred were. Sometimes they want to just take advantage of loopholes and things like that, make sure they're getting as much money as possible for their clients. So have at least enough liability coverage to where if you got sued for everything you own, you'd have a policy that could pay out for it before they'd even get the chance to come after your assets. So
And if you're in the retail business, let's just cover retail quickly. If you're in a retail setting and you have a brick and mortar, gotta have it. You gotta have it. You gotta have fire, because somebody said the other week, well, I belong to a nonprofit organization, Sons of Italy, and we have a clubhouse that's huge that we lease from the Grange, another nonprofit, right? But all the stuff inside's ours, right? The commercial kitchen we put in, the bar, the tables, the chairs, everything we've got in there to have events is ours. We don't have to cover the building. That's the Grange's responsibility, but we have to cover everything else. And people come in and have drinks and they, or whatever. We have to have a big liability policy, huge. And then the fire policy on everything else. If it went down, we'd lose all the inside of that place. So just think of what the loss potential is as to what direction you're going to go.
definitely.
Any other questions? Yeah. Let's see if I can get the, I'm not the norm. Emily and my boss are out of town today. They're at class. Thank you very much. Thank you. Out of town today, so I'm filling in. So sorry about this. I have somewhere a survey that my lovely, where did she put it? Of course, now I can't find it, right? There you go. Tell you what we're going to do. We've got your email addresses, all of you. So we will send the survey to your email address. Please, when you get to fill it out, we like to know what you liked, what you didn't like. Give us suggestions of what you think you'd like the next time. Okay. We're starting to redo these classes again. Now that COVID's kind of getting out of the way and we've got a little more time to spend helping people on a classroom type basis. We've gotten used to Zoom. We're going to have more of these. So we'll send you the survey. Please do that. We'll also send you a copy of the slide deck and our YouTube channel. So let's go ahead and get you some of that information. It's right on here. It's the last slide, I believe. Yeah, there you go. And of course, please sign up for our regular services at SBDC. We have our website here. We've got our LinkedIn link, our Facebook link, our Twitter link, YouTube channel. This will be posted to our YouTube channel. Give it about a week and it'll show up. We have over, I'm guessing 100 already taped classes on that Shasta Cascade Small Business Development Center YouTube channel. You'll even see my bald head teaching stuff. This is on there several times. One of my favorite classes. It's based directly on Shasta County for the most part, but a lot of the things that we cover in that class will cover anywhere in California. So it works. Okay. Mm-hmm. All sorts of classes available: marketing, Facebook. There's classes on QuickBooks. We have a QuickBooks specialist. How about that? Rebecca, she's fantastic. If you're looking from out of the area, americansbdc.org, you can find your local SBDC. We're everywhere in the United States, okay? Everywhere. We just happen to have a 2-county coverage space, but Chico and all these outlying, Crescent City, San Diego, they're all covered by SBDC offices. So it's great. There was a question about any recommended agents. We do not recommend agents directly. It's things, right? There are many agents in the area that offer liability and business coverage. I went to my personal insurance carrier first. That's what I did, right? I had everything else, the house, the cars, the boat. I had everything State Farm. So that was just me. So I called them, right? I called Dave and said, "Hey, Dave, I got to have business coverage. Is that okay?" And he goes, "Oh yeah, let's walk you through the steps." So the way to do it is go through your carrier. Okay. If you're with AAA, I believe they don't have this coverage, if I'm not mistaken. So then you'll have to search outside that box. But start with your personal first, the way I always look at it, and then check around for prices. Okay. The higher the liability risk, the more you should shop, in my opinion. See, my liability was low. I had a low liability, right? Somebody comes in, falls, slips in a class, breaks their leg. Okay, well, that could happen, right? But other than that, I'm not trimming trees, having a tree fall on a house. See, that's a high liability. So it just depends on how much liability you think you've got.
I would also, I want to add to that too. I'd say a great thing to look out for in an agent is somebody that has a lot of experience and somebody that's communicative and knows you as a business owner. When you have a personal auto insurance policy, a home policy, things like that, it's pretty much concrete, right? Like you're not doing a lot of things in your personal life. Usually that can land you a lot of liability exposure. So you don't need to necessarily have a super close relationship with your agent, but when you're a business owner, you're a freelancer, you're a contractor, whatever, you're making your own money. You're going out and doing things that the average person isn't doing. And you're going to have liability exposure built into that. So make sure that you choose a good agent that's really well versed in the industry, that understands multiple different companies, that doesn't just understand one company. They know what else is out there on the market, and that you can have a relationship with. Is really important when you have commercial insurance, to be able to have a relationship with your agent. Somebody that you can just call and say, hey, I've changed this in my business, or I've added this department, or I'm selling this now. And you run that past them and they're like, yeah, so this policy doesn't cover for that. So we need to get you into either a different policy, or we need to add this on. They'll troubleshoot with you, and they'll tell you, pretty bluntly, that it's not covered, or you need to do something different. So just make sure you have a good relationship. Should be somebody that you can kind of click with. I think really getting a good vibe from a person and connecting with them is a really good first step in knowing if you have a good agent. And then check the reputation. Look at Google reviews. I have connections with really, really good commercial insurance agents, and I, as somebody who does commercial insurance myself, communicate with multiple different agents that specialize in a lot of different kinds of businesses. Some agents might only like to do contractors. If I'm not used to writing contractors, I communicate with them. So make sure that they know the community as well, that they're focused on education. So that's where you just quiz them. Just say, how do you run your business? I'm a new business owner. I'm not super familiar with this. How do you run your business? How do you like to communicate with your clients? Kind of start quizzing them. You'll learn something, but you'll also, learn how they operate themselves. So just be direct, ask questions. If they're comfortable with themselves and they're confident in their abilities, they should be able to answer those questions, no problem. And then you'll learn about them. You'll see if you want to do business with them. So
Perfect.
Anything else?
Any other last questions, everybody? Looks like we have got it here, huh? Well, thank you very much, all of you, for showing up and watching today. Again, this will be on our YouTube channel in about a week. And when Emily gets back, our admin, head of administration, she'll send you all the copies. And again, the survey. And the survey, again, will just be a simple, click and send. Let us know what you need, what you want. We're going to do some more classes. I teach the How to Start a Business class live here in our offices in downtown Redding, California, starting on the 11th. Yay, we're back live. How about that? Zoom is okay, but I like having, people I can see. So this will be a fun thing, getting back alive in the classroom. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye. Right. Stop the share. There we go. Well, thanks, Harrison.
Yeah, thank you.
Very, very well done. Good to have an insurance class again. It's good. It's been a while, like 3 years.
It kind of blows my mind. I literally just basically cold called David one day. I was like, hey, I like educating business owners. Do you have any need for somebody to present? And he was like, yeah, actually, we need an insurance person. I think you guys had a lady that did it at the time, but she was another state or something. But it's very funny.
Right. All right. Well, take care. Have a good day.
You too. Take care.
Bye-bye.